1270. How do we know? Well, there's a testament where the owner he dies, and with his testament, his eldest son inherits the mill. And the person who died was the Lord of Rotselaar. And they had a sort of castle downstream, and this castle was built to prevent the Vikings to come back and plunder Leuven, as they did a few times. So now along the rivers there were castles like this to prevent the Vikings coming in. So it's a pretty educational field. So they used this river to go to Leuven, and they even occupied Leuven for 14 years. So it was not only, they didn't only plunder, but they also tried to stay somewhere. The weather was good, the women were there, and so they stayed. So 1217, this is a long time ago, but in this part of Europe, there have been water mills even before the Romans came here. Before the Romans, this land was occupied by the Celtic tribes, and they also had water mills. So the picture we have of the Celts from the Romans is that they were fairly primitive, but it seems this is not very correct. And so history is written by the one who writes. So the Celts, they didn't write, so we don't know. So then 1217, of course, the buildings that are here, they are not from that period. The oldest part is the miller's house, the piece with the brown stone underneath. It's from 1570 something. It's the oldest house of the municipality. And it replaced a wooden building. So the people here used to build with wood and lime and straw, and they made sort of wooden buildings. But if you were heating, you can open fire in these buildings. Sometimes it went wrong and everything caught fire. So once in a while the whole town burned down. So then in 1570 they built a new house. Now this mill has been always one of the biggest mills of the Netherlands. To be correct, third biggest water mill there has ever been. The biggest is not that far from here, 10 kilometers from here, on another river. It's called 's-Hertogenmoos. It's the mills of the Duke. Here it was the mill of the Lord, and then the second biggest was the mill of the Counts of Flanders in Western Flanders. So you hear lords, dukes. So it was a privilege of the nobility to build water and windmills. And this lasted until the French Revolution. So the French came in and they also imposed their laws. And whatever the French Republic did here from 92 till 1815, this has always remained legal. So they took all the mills from the nobility, all their castles, they took all the churches and the abbeys and they sold it. And this was legal. Even when we had the Dutch Republic here for 15 years and later Belgium, all the deeds the French did were still legal. So when the dukes came back, they couldn't have their property back. So also the mill here was sold, and since then it has been in not noble hands.
It's back now in noble hands.
Yeah, okay. Ecopo. The building here is from 1664. So in between it's more or less a century. And this century was a very dark page in our history. So we had here, Flanders and Brabant, it was a very rich country. It was under the Dukes of Burgundy. But then the Protestantism came up, and it was especially here in the south, because in the Netherlands, what's now the Netherlands, there weren't that many people living at that moment. So here we had very big cities like Ghent. Ghent was one of the largest cities of Europe at that time. It was a city that made war to the King of France, so they were feeling strong. And so the Protestantism rose, and each church they tear down all the saints and all the statues, broken down. And at that time, the king of Spain was the king, and he didn't like it, and he sent the Duke of Alva with mercenaries and Spanish troops, and they fought the people here, and then in fact the south was lost to the cause, and they gave people 3 years' time. Either they would become Catholic again, or they had to move. And what percentage you don't have to answer, because it's in their history lesson, not in ours. But what's the percentage of people you think moved?
None.
None? 50%.
Oh,
The whole top layer of the Flemish and Walloon was also people from Wallonia. So the artists, the merchants, because the Dutch closed the port of Antwerp with their ships. There was not one ship coming in again. Artisans, so only the poorest farmers stayed behind. And that's where I'm a descendant from. So that's why we are humble. And when you ask someone in an international environment who wants to make the report, it will always be someone from the Netherlands who says, I'll do it.
Not me, but
There was someone else.
I have my people for that.
nee, is klaar.
Yeah, but you can still see it. The Flemish people, we miss every Flemish person. His grandfather is either a farmer or a laborer. There's not one of the nobility, because they were French.
Yeah.
So there were no rich people. They were French. So that's what happened here. So we still feel a minority, whereas we are a majority. So it's not a normal society. So in 1664, there was finally peace, and the Duke, who was Spanish, he was in fact the financer of the Spanish king. He built a new mill, and his mill was way too large for the village here. No, this mill was especially milling for the city of Leuven, which was at that time one of the biggest cities of this region. And so this was a big mill, and about 100 years later they built a horse stable, and that's why, because the boats, the grain they were grinding here came from other countries, and the boats came on the river, so the river was navigable, but it was a long way between Leuven and Mechelen, because the river makes bends. It was about almost 80 kilometers, whereas when you drive now from one city to the other, it's 28 kilometers. So the people from Leuven, they bought land, and they took them centuries to buy it, and then they dug a canal. It was with hand, you do it. And then in 1750, the canal was finally finished, and then the boats were no longer coming here, so they had, with horse and carriage, they had to go and fetch the grain to grind. And so you see that the complex gets shape. You don't have to look for straight angles or how do you say it, evenwijdige parallel lines.
Yeah.
There are none. Even when they build the mill, the plan is still, I can still find it in the archive. It's rectangular,
Yeah.
but in fact, it's a trapezium. So you know, you can do it straight angles. You can make it with the diagonals. Diagonals. Yeah. But I think the person who did it, he was drunk, or he wasn't really able. But so it's trapezium.